Family Heritage Living. I wanted to do a follow-up on the video I did the other day about not being ashamed to be a keeper of the home. The response that I had on that was really, to me, overwhelming. We had over 70 comments from women, and all of them were revealing in 3 categories. One, many of them just shared, their story briefly, but was total in agreement that the heart of the woman needs to be turned towards the home, even if she worked outside of the home. The other category was stating the way that our country has gone, the way the family has been degraded and torn apart, and that the mind frame of being at home was certainly right. And the third category, to me, was the most revealing, because what it said to me was there are scars left in our lives by either decisions that are made by those who raise us, or decisions that we are forced to make while we're raising our children because maybe we lack support, maybe we lack an environment that allows us that opportunity to make that choice to raise our children. And some of it was just heartbreaking, because I can relate on the level of having to, live in a society that doesn't accept a woman's choice to be in the home. Our society is all about pushing choice, the free choice to do whatever you want. Women should have that choice, but in reality, women don't have the choice to stay at home. We're looked down upon, we're degraded. And that's what creates the struggle and leaves the scars. Now, in this video, I prayed about this video because I'm not quite sure what it is that I need to say or should say or want to say. I want to make sure that I don't alienate and offend anybody, but sometimes that just happens. You can't be passionate about something and not offend somebody. It's going to bother somebody somewhere down the road. And I feel like right now all I need to do is share my testimony, and from there I'm just going to let God lead, and hopefully I will yield to Him. Sometimes I get ahead of myself or ahead of Him, and then I end up wanting to backtrack. But thankfully this is video, so I can edit where I need to edit. If you've watched us at all, you know that we are aged parents. We've got youngins, but we're in our late 40s and mid 50s. We had our first ones in our early 20s and 30s. So we've been around the block. As my husband would say, this isn't our first rodeo. What happened to us when we were younger and we were raising our children, RJ was 3 when we got converted to the Lord, and He revealed Himself to us, and we started going to church. And coming out of the world has a different expectation from you than the church does. The world embraces a lot of things that shouldn't be and that are destructive to the family. And most of it's monetary. Most of it is, just advancing and getting ahead in the world. Where when you enter the church, you are encouraged to get ahead in the Lord. At least that's the ideal thing that should happen. Unfortunately, that's not what happens in a lot of situations today. This is not about dogging the church. Please understand, there are some great churches, but there are some that need to rethink their path, and a lot of people have been exposed to those. So for us, we had a good church with a great foundation, a great group of loving people, but it was not encouraging in the foundation of keeping the wife at home, because all the women worked. And so instead of the church taking a stance to say, you know what, if you got to work, you got to work, whatever the circumstance, and then saying, but the Word of God says this, so we need to have you focus your hearts to home and encourage you to create that home environment for your family that will help create that strong structure. It just became silent on it. And when something becomes silent, you all of a sudden, if you're doing the very thing that you're told to shush up about, you feel like you have to vindicate yourself all the time. And instead of doing the thing and becoming the best you can be, you just spend your time worrying about trying to justify what you're doing. And it was a real struggle for us because we had nobody to encourage us. We had nobody to talk to about our struggles. We struggled financially, as many people do who only have one source of income or who have a limited income because the mother's main focus isn't earnings. We didn't have the new cars. We didn't have the vacations. We didn't do the clothes shopping. We were on a budget for our food. And that created another whole situation in the church fellowship because everybody else were okay in those situations. And nobody could understand why we couldn't do this or couldn't do that. Now, for the most part, I have to say that we did what we had to do. But there wasn't that feeling of I've made a good choice and I'm going to be the best that I can be with it. It was that feeling that I've made the right choice, but I'm constantly struggling to keep going with it because all around me is reinforcing that it's not the right choice. Many women are like I was, many men were like my husband was, that it is the correct choice. It is the good choice. We're just going to keep doing it. And the thing that I have that is scarred in me is the fact that many women are still living this. And many women need the encouragement that they can make that choice and they can be the best that they can be. Now, you can't make that choice on your own if you're married. Your husband's got to be supportive. And if he's not, then that becomes a whole nother area. But if you have a supportive husband, and whether you work or not, women need to be encouraged to understand that it's the correct choice. I have women that are watching our channel that are considered, we'll say, from the left or liberal, and it's wanting to raise your children or wanting to do the best for your family isn't just a conservative thing. There's a lot of women that are on the liberal end of things that want to be there for their children, but they feel hindered by their own side. And we have to understand that because God made us the way we are, no matter what we do, there's this instinct inside of us to want to raise our families, to want to create homes. And it's been, our society has tried to extract that from within us. And that's where the struggle for many women come from that don't understand being at home, is because they've been told all along, you're better than just being a housewife. You're better than just raising kids. You're better than just cleaning. And they don't, they've bought into that, but yet inside of them, they're struggling with that because they want to be home. They want to raise their children. They want to be domestic. Those aren't bad words. Wife, mother, domestic, homemaker, housekeeper. Those aren't nasty words. Those are some of the sweetest words spoken in our language. And we can see the moral decay over the past century, since from World War I, when women were really pulled out of the homes because they had to fill the roles of the men, and then shortly after we went into World War II. But then we've got, there's other things, other dark forces that have brought the woman out of the workplace. You get two incomes coming into the home. You pay double the taxes. Government's all for that. It's kind of you can see a history of things, but you can always trust that Satan is behind it. He's the one moving the forces and creating this. So as Christian women, we have to decide that we're taking back our homes. And again, as I said in the last video, it's not whether you work out of the home or not. You're taking back your homes. We've got to encourage the women around us to take back your homes. Quit apologizing for wanting to focus, for wanting to put your family first. Quit apologizing to the people around you. Quit feeling the guilt. Quit buying into the lies that society is feeding you. And know that you have made the right choice when your heart turns towards home. Now, if you work out of home, you've got a lot more to juggle. And if you work in home, you have a lot more to juggle. We've had a family business now since Zebulon was just a baby. And personal reasons why we ended up doing a family business was, just that, personal reasons. Maybe we'll talk about some other video, but I'm not going to go there this one. I really had no idea how much of my time would be involved in it, to be honest, and neither did Ron. And the Lord has blessed us. He's blessed us in this business, and right now I have to be a primary part behind the scenes on the computer, dealing with customers, creating the listings and all this stuff. And I'm kind of like, I'm the supervisor. I give the work details because I know what orders have come in. And I find it hard to juggle everything because my work is here at home. Work is like almost never stopping if I don't make it be that way. And then I get the same guilt that any mother gets that works away from home, as far as not spending enough time with the kids and not being able to, dedicate enough time doing this. But the advantage that I have at working at home is I'm here, and my kids know I'm here. And I can, I can take the day off if I feel things are too neglected, or maybe the day before I spent too much time with work and my little ones did not get enough of me. I have the privilege to take the time off and say, I've had enough. I've got to reprioritize my way of thinking, where if you're working outside of the home, you don't get that advantage. You don't get that that privilege of doing that. But they're both struggles. Now, a lot of women that work and have chosen a career sometimes later find that they're just locked into it and they don't want to be there. They'd rather be at home. Doesn't mean that you can't do both. Things just have to be reprioritized for you. Women that really want to be at home, they have a career, we have so many more options today than we had back in the 90s when we first started our family. We would never have been able to start an online business back in the 90s, first off, because even though the internet was around, it wasn't real common, in the home. Most people were just kind of, email was it, maybe a little bit of web searching. And even in 2000, people were really getting a hold of the internet, but for somebody like me who's not tech savvy, I really had no idea. And we just kept praying and praying and praying about it. We wanted Ron home with his back problems. It was difficult, and then he had his second surgery in 2004, and I had to go to work outside of the home for 3 years, and it was just it seemed to be getting worse, and we just kept praying and praying and praying. And Ron went back to work in 2007 at a hideous job that he was never home in. And then when Zebulon was born, he said I don't want to be missing him. I don't want to be missing him growing up, because he was working these really bad hours. And it was like, if I remember correctly, the times was like he had to be to work at 4 in the afternoon, and he would work either till they worked 12-hour shifts, 4 in the morning, so he'd come home and he'd be lethargic and he couldn't get the body shift going on, and sometimes, work would drag on. It was a mess. But we prayed for years, and in 2010, God started to direct us towards how to make this happen. But again, by 2010, I had been doing a lot of research. I now understood online issues. Etsy was new, but it was an avenue that didn't exist many years before that. And it all worked out for us, okay? So I guess my point is there are a lot of women who run businesses now from their home. So women that need to work, whether it's because they're single parents or because their husband needs them to back them up, can often do it from their home. And they can often include the children in on it. It's a totally different world. It's much more freeing than 20 years ago. So there's a lot of hope there, and there's a lot of encouragement there. And I just think women need to realize they have a lot of options, But the most important thing for them to realize is that before we heed ourselves to anybody else's directive or disdain, we need to look into the Word, and we need to realize what the Word says. And we need to submit ourselves to what God says. Again, I know it's difficult if you don't have a husband who is supportive. I know I've known a lot of ladies who wanted to be home, and their husband has said, "Nope, you know what? We need the income." This is a whole different video. In fact, Ron says I'm doing a video on men, because he has a whole different perspective. He's a man, and He knows, he's gone through his struggles because of the lack of support, and he's seen the demand on men, from men on women, and not letting them be, the keeper of the home. And so I think it's interesting that I think it'll be interesting to get his perspective. But I'm just saying that as a woman, I know, if Ron hadn't been supportive, if Ron hadn't wanted me home, if Ron hadn't cared who raised his children, if Ron hadn't, made ways for us to do this, I can see where it'd be very impossible. And then again, of course, if you're a woman and you want to be home and your husband doesn't want you home, then there's other things to deal with, bitterness, not becoming bitter, not blaming him, trying to keep the right perspective. It's all, it dominoes, it's just this domino effect. So the point in this video is, like I said, I'm not really sure. I feel that we need to get to a stage in our Christian community, and our Christian community, whether it's in church or YouTube or neighbors or whatever, to encourage the word. I don't care what your opinion is or what my opinion is. It's not going to change what the word says. And I don't care how many different versions of the Bible you purchase. And there's a lot of versions that twist the word and take words out. It doesn't change what the word of God says. We need to make sure that we know the word and that we follow the word. And if we do that, everything else is going to work out. We can feel good about our decisions, and maybe we do, need to juggle or be more creative than the woman next to us. And that's okay, because God has made a way for us to do that. And that's through seeking Him. He will show us what we need to do. But we just need to be confident in the decisions we make based on the word. So I want to thank all the ladies that took time to leave such great comments. I wish I could answer every one of them. Like I said, I had over 70 comments, and I just can't respond to every one of them. So I kind of thought I'd do this video in that response. And I want to encourage all of you who are focused on your hearts being in your home. Keep going. Know that other women though do struggle, and pray for them. For those of you that have scars from the past, let God heal you. It's not easy. It's not easy to let those old wounds go, but be a springboard for somebody else. That young lady can be at home and be the best she can be to raise her family. And if she can't be at home physically all the time, that her heart is at home. So, and for those of you that feel the scars from your mother not being at home, again, let God heal you, and be that springboard. I mean, we go through things in our lives for a purpose. I don't feel that anything that we have ever experienced goes without the opportunity to help somebody else or to be a lesson for somebody else. And I think that's why I think that with this situation, I'm passionate. I got through with, I don't really have scars from the struggles we went through. What I have is passion, and I have to make sure that my passion doesn't get in the way of encouraging women as how God would want me. Because sometimes, like my mouth gets ahead of my brain, or, my thoughts get ahead of what God would have me do. And I, just squash the whole thing. I can just squash some things, but that's not constructive. That doesn't do what it needs to do. We're in a different world, than we were when our grandmothers were at home and our great grandmothers were at home. We are kind of like starting all over, and we can reverse this pattern of the home being destroyed, but we do have to do it with a certain amount of, I think, compassion and love and understanding, and realizing that everybody is in this different situation. It could be a widow who has to raise her children. A lot of divorces, it could be a single mother just from divorce. It could be a single mother who was never married who has to raise her children, and she has to work. It can be a situation where, the husband is unable to earn enough income, whether maybe he's injured, maybe he lost his job. We have to take those things into account. And so it's not changing necessarily the person that we need to do as much as change the person's thought process by prayer and showing them the word and encouraging them. Again, that there's no greater thing that women can do than raise their families or be there as a center focus for their families. And it doesn't even matter, if you don't have children. We have no idea how many people we reach each day just by being, who we are. And you can be a single person. Like my mother, I'll give you a quick testimony here. My mother is a single mother. She had 4 children. She was women's lib. She was not a women's libber, but she unfortunately reaped from the 60s and 70s the negative aspects of the women's lib movement, okay? And she ended up being single with 4 kids. She had to work. Now, her choices in life, she never remarried. That was just better off. She felt that was better off for her. She raised us kids. I felt the struggles of a single parent. I would have loved to have had my mother home. I would have loved to have had a father in the home. But it didn't happen. It wasn't possible. And she stayed single. But as she has stayed single, and she's an older woman now, she's 75, she has formed ways to reach people. She's made, when she was in her 50s, she made, dinners for all the aging people, neighbors in her neighborhood that couldn't get out. She's taken people to doctors that couldn't get there. She's reached out to the sick. She looks after the animals in her neighborhood. And we have no idea how many people she's reached or how she's affected people. And she doesn't have a clue. She just finds ways to keep her heart centered at home and in her neighborhood. Her focus wasn't on work. Her focus was on her home and her family. And it makes a difference in the end. You can be single, you can be married, you can be, with children, without children. It doesn't matter. As women, our hearts are to be directed towards home. I just want every woman to have immense pride in making home number one, because that is a gift of God. And, you want to wake up in the morning and say, I did well yesterday. I did what I was supposed to do, and I feel good about it. And not have regrets. I mean, there's going to be a lot of regrets. When the time comes and we meet our Maker, we'll all have regrets. But we don't have to have regrets because others look down upon us or others tried to steal the joy that God intended for us. So on that note, I hope this speaks to somebody out there. Again, thank you everybody for your comments that you left in the last video. There was 70 comments, and I thought about that. I thought, man, wouldn't that be great to get 70 women together who had the same perspective and belief? And imagine the prayer meeting we could have. I mean, it would be phenomenal. It could change our entire area. And it just, because I thought, we're not a big channel. We don't have a whole lot of subscribers, and 70 comments is pretty good for us. And some would look at that and say, well, that's not much. But I was thinking, wow, that's enormous. 70 women with the same perspective and belief in the Word. And what phenomenal movements could be made in prayer if we could get together and do that. So, all right, everybody. I have kept this video going long enough. Hope I haven't bored you to death. God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.